what has happened over the last couple of years, I would say as many as 6 to 7 years, that has made entrepreneurship and startups so wildly popular in India? What is going on here? Does this make sense? Is this a bubble? Is this sustainable? Is this a fabulous opportunity that you guys are missing out on in case you're not availing of it? So here are some interesting statistics for you. Several of you may know these, but those of you who don't, it will blow your mind. So you've heard of a company called Flipkart. In fact, probably you have purchased from Flipkart. You have heard of things like Book My Show, where you can book movie tickets. You have used a variety of apps such as WhatsApp. You have purchased things online from Amazon, Snapdeal, etc. Do you have any idea how much these companies are worth? Which means, since every business out there can be purchased, for example, if you want to buy Reliance Industries from Mukesh Ambani, you can buy all the shares of Reliance Industries, and the share price, the cumulative share price you will pay for buying all the shares is the price of Reliance Industries. You want to buy Tata Steel, you can do that. You want to buy Maruti Udyog, you can buy that. So do you know what is the price of some of these new age companies which are not as old as Colgate and Procter & Gamble and Reliance Industries and Coal India and Steel India, etc.? Any idea of, let's say, for instance, if you wanted to buy Flipkart, I'm talking of you want to become the owner of Flipkart, how much would it cost you? Yeah, the number is somewhere between 15 and 20 billion dollars. And you know, when you say such big numbers, you kind of lose track of what these numbers really translate to. So to just give you an example, it is roughly around 1.5 to 2 lakh crore rupees, right? Even today, there are people who are investing into startups and into startups such as Flipkart, etc. So if you have to buy Flipkart today, you have to pay, I'm just using round numbers here, 1.5 to 2 lakh crore rupees, right? And when you pay that money to Flipkart, what is it that you buy? What are you really buying? Do you know that these guys have very, very few physical assets? What they're really doing is they have a huge customer base, they have some data with them, they have relationships in place, they have systems, processes, computer software, etc. They really are not selling you land, machinery, equipment, goods, and the like. Now, if you have not fully appreciated the number I threw at you because it's such a large number, try to understand that there are almost no companies in India, barring the likes of Steel Authority of India and Coal India, etc., which cost as much as Flipkart. Now, who set up Flipkart? These two Bansals, Binny Bansal and Sachin Bansal. When did they start it? Less than 10 years ago, or roughly 10 years ago. So, compared to the likes of the Tatas who have been doing business for generations and are almost, synonymous with Indian industry, these guys are like kids, went to college, did not have too much money of their own, took up a job, and then they said, you know what, we think we could do something like this ourselves, set it up, and in a period of a decade or even less, have created something which is so valuable that will cost you lakhs of crores of rupees to buy that. How did that happen? To look at one example or a few examples like this and then believe that we could also replicate it. Fundamentally, what has changed between 30 years ago and 5 years ago is that today there are people who are willing to take a financial risk on you. Now, these people are called investors, and you might think, you know what, there have been investors all the time. As in, there were investors 1,000 years ago also, I'm sure. There's a very big difference between that category of investor and the new category of investors, which are commonly called angel investors, venture capitalists, private equity investors, etc. The big difference is, let us rewind ourselves to 50 to 100 years ago. You are somebody who is about to set up a retail outlet. Retail outlet selling what? Let us say mithai. So you're going to sell sweets in this retail outlet. How would you have gone about it? You'd probably have scouted out for a place and said, this is my retail outlet. You would have probably spent some money in preparing your inventory. You would probably do up the interiors of the shop or the outlet a little bit. Then you would go ahead and popularize yourself by whatever mechanism, maybe communicating to people, maybe standing outside your shop and shouting about it, maybe giving free samples, but some amount of marketing. And you would know that on day one, you are not going to turn profitable. It will take you some time. It might take you days, weeks, or maybe even few months. This is reasonable to expect, I think, even 50 years or 100 years ago. That means anybody who starts a business is willing to spend a certain period of time where they are putting their capital at risk, which means they are putting money in, and we will wait for a gestation period. This gestation period will last days, weeks, and months. However, why are they not willing to last years, decades, and centuries? As in, if you can last for days, weeks, and months, why can't you last for years, decades, and centuries? The difference is that they do not have those deep pockets. So even if I said, instead of trying to break even in few weeks, Why don't you undertake somewhat more riskier activity and you will break even in a few years? You would say, hang on, how will I make money in those few years? How will I sustain my home? How will the costs, how will the electricity be paid, etc.? What has changed, and this happened in the US probably 20, 25, maybe even 30 years ago, and it happened in India 5, 8, max 10 years ago, is that a lot of patient capital has come in. Which means people are saying, you know what? Bhagavad Gita told you, right? Go and do activity, don't bother about fruit. Yeah, I'll give you money to do that. Right? A lot of these companies that we talk about have negligible or very low profits. Flipkart doesn't make profits. Snapdeal doesn't make profits. Flipkart has a value of 1.5 to 2 lakh crore rupees. So that means if you go ahead and buy Flipkart, congratulations, you have just bought yourself an opportunity to lose money every year. That sounds illogical, but what I'm trying to tell you is that the world has changed a little. I'll give you another example. Facebook purchased WhatsApp probably like 1.5 odd years ago. How much did it pay for that? It paid roughly $20 billion. They had said 18, 19, but it became a little more. At that time, the dollar price was 60 rupees. So that means they paid 1,20,000 crore rupees to buy a company which makes no money. As in their turnover was 50 million, which is 0.05 billion. 0.05 billion, and they paid 20 billion to buy this company. And that means, so why is Flipkart buying it? Is Flipkart nuts? Is it regretting its purchase? When you think about startups in the same sense as you think about conventional businesses, something is amiss. Either the world has changed, either profit is no longer necessary, either, if rules of economics do not hold, or we are not understanding the new rules of economics. People who commonly invest in the stock market, right? Directly buying stock and talking to brokers, etc. When some of these people try to invest in the stock of private companies, especially startups, they are initially very excited because supposedly there's a lot of money to be made, but they make a few investments and they say, this is stupid, this doesn't make sense. So when I am advising startups, I tell them as far as possible, don't take money from people who invest in the stock market because they have a certain belief in their superstitions, because there's a lot of nonsense that happens in the stock market also. So they have a set of superstitions, you require a different set of superstitions, and these two will not match. Let me just get back to where I started from as to what has really changed. What has changed is that if you were setting up that shop where I said you're going to sell sweets, and I have a lot of money. How do I have that money? Ignore for a second. I have a lot of money and I say, you know what? Why do you do this? Why not open like a shop which is like 100 times bigger? Or why don't you go ahead and open 100 different shops, right? And you will say, listen, I don't have the money for that. I said, yeah, that's where I come in. But you know what you do? Hereafter, I will be your, let's say, 50% partner. So we'll do it in partnership. I'll give you the money, the luxury to set up 100 shops without making profit, because what you would have done is set up one shop, start making money, 1 year later collect some money, 5 years later have so much money that you set up your second shop. Which is why when you go to a place like Lonavala and there are all these chikki shops, other than Maganlal Chikki, which has like many outlets, most others have one or very few outlets, but you will see written there, established 1962. Right? And they are saying that with a lot of pride that we are like, more than half a century old. But the fact is that they could open like 3 outlets in this half century. Is that suppose somebody could throw capital in your direction, take the risk, the capital risk out of your problem and say, go, you are good at making mithai and sweets, go and make them and sell them to the best of your capability. If you don't sell, I have not given you a loan, so you don't have to repay me. Loans have existed since forever. We hear of stories at the times of kings and queens also where loans existed. I have become your business partner, so I am taking the risk away. Wouldn't that be absolutely fabulous? Like for example, just yesterday, I was in Bangalore with a company called Team Indus. What this company is trying to do is they are trying to send a mission to the moon. Right? And for this, they are trying to raise $35 to $40 million. And I have met people who have invested into this company. And they don't yet know that when they will send their rover on the moon, what will happen? As in, will they find people on the moon to sell goods to them and make a profit? You get what I'm saying? What some of these people with now abundant capital are doing is trying to create the next big thing. For instance, when Motorola created the cell phone, I think probably around 1970 or so, maybe a few years later, when Motorola created the mobile phone, it was this huge, big, fat thing. And what happened is that at that time, the monopolist in this space, telephony, was AT&T. So AT&T did not know that this ugly little device with which you can walk around and still talk on the phone is going to become popular. So they hired a very famous consulting company which you have heard of called McKinsey. So they asked them that, it's like 1973, so we want to take a long-term view. So by the year 2000, which was 27 years away, how many people in the US will want to own a device such as this? So if it was a small number, then AT&T would say, we are not interested. However, if it was a huge market, AT&T would not want to miss that opportunity. So McKinsey went about its magic and came up with all sorts of calculations that at the end said, our estimate is that roughly 900 odd thousand, there's actually an exact number, but roughly 900,000, which means 9 lakh odd people, would want to have a device like this 27 years from now. Right? So AT&T says, yeah, that's like nothing. I have like more than that in like few cities of the US put together. And you know what really happened, what the number came out to be? Again, this is US only. And US is a very small market for mobile phones compared to like places like China, India, etc. That number which was predicted to be under 1 million actually turned out to be over 100 million. Right? What I'm trying to tell you is that some of what we are experiencing, technology has become so much a part of our life that it actually owns us. It's no longer about us owning technology. And if it can own us, it can own our wealth, it can own our desires, it can shape how we perceive things, it can shape how we want to spend money. And that is why there are investors who are betting on this 1 in a million chance. Not just because you see startups fail does not mean the investors failed. They know they are taking a 1 in a million chance. It's not a gamble because they are trying to assess the probability of success. Today there are such investors who are taking that 1 in a million chance. You, especially the people who still are at the beginning stages of their career, are the first Indian generation which has this opportunity to attract capital and play that game which they thought they could play. And if, now I know that we should not keep saying 1 in a million because that makes 999,000 failures, but you know what? The good thing is that if you fail in the classic definition of the term fail, even then, life is not over, which probably was the case with your parents, etc. They would have to go back to their village and live in the village forever. But I think you are the first generation who can make this happen. There are people willing to put capital at risk. You guys have been very attentive. Thank you very much.